and Dr. Boykin to the meeting. And so, of course, this is the first monthly faculty learning circle of 2023. So this afternoon, I welcome Dr. Joy Longo and Dr. Lynn Palma, who will be presenting on caring-based evaluation of student learning. Dr. Joy Longo is the Assistant Dean, Undergraduate Programs, and Associate Professor at the College of Nursing at Florida Atlantic University College of Nursing. She received her MSN and PhD at FAU, where she was introduced to caring theory and caring theorists that informed her practice, research, and teaching. Dr. Lynn Palma is an associate professor at FAU and with many years of experience in various roles in the College of Nursing, predominantly in the nurse practitioner program. She recently transitioned from director of an NP residency program in California back to full-time academia. In her recent role as program director, she developed the curriculum, which included evaluation tools for nurse practitioner residents at a federally qualified health center. She attended a certificate program at UCSF called Teach the UCSF, where she gained additional skills in clinical teaching. She developed a preceptor training and peer review program at her former clinical faculty. Lynn is currently introducing a tool to evaluate nurse practitioners in the clinical setting in her NP primary care course at FAU during an on-campus intensive. She is dedicated to the process of evaluating learners and providing feedback to help students grow as caring clinicians in the primary care setting. So I welcome Dr. Joy Longo and Dr. Lynn Palma. Take it away.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces. So I was asked to participate in this caring circle probably at the beginning of the year. And as many of you know, as we're getting ready for CCNE accreditation, we are doing a lot of curriculum work. We are looking at not only our evaluations, but also other components of the curriculum. So what I came to learn a few weeks ago was that Dr. Palma was working on developing a new evaluation tool for the NPs in the master's program. So I thought it was a great opportunity to look at a work in progress and have some dialogue around that development. So Lynn and I met, and we just had, I'm just going to share our two short learning objectives, and then we have some discussion points that we will talk about. So our objectives are to identify components of a caring-based evaluation tool for clinical practice and discuss caring concepts that are used in the evaluation. So I'm going to actually let Dr. Palma take over because I know she has a lot to say about her evaluation tool.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for inviting me. Are you guys able to see my screen here?
Yes.
Okay. And so this just kind of keeps me on track, right? So I feel very privileged to be here among all of you big brains, I call it, people that I've known for a long, long time. And so when Joy asked me to do this, I thought, well, I was really asked to revise the evaluation forms for the NP program. And when I went back and looked at the dates, it's like, oh yeah, that was 2012. Yeah, these need to be looked at again. And so we did some pretty major renovations in the forms. And I look forward to seeing what you all have to say about them. They've sort of been through subcommittee and then through the master's program, and we're sort of piloting these new forms this semester, and hopefully we'll be able to tweak them so that they'll be just right for all of us. So I wanted to start with how I sort of got into the whole evaluation piece other than my work at FAU. So when I took the job as the director of the MP program in California, and by the way, I was teaching adjunct faculty here the whole time, so I never really left, right? But I had this full-time position as the director of this new program. So I really helped kick off the new program in Petaluma, which is north of San Francisco. And of course, part of that was developing the evaluation tools, like how do you evaluate these residents that come in newly graduated. And that's a big part of accreditation, right? Is to be able to evaluate them. And what really appealed to me about this, that's my daughter's dog barking because she just came home. What really appealed to me about this site in general, the health center, is that their core values were very, very similar to what we have here at FAU. And, you know, anybody can make a tree diagram like this, right? And throw out a lot of words and it looks kind of pretty. But I have to say, they live by these words, and everything that they do is really guided by these core values. And that was very much of interest to me when I entered in this new role. And the picture there that you see with me is a few of my residents, actually very recent. One of them is having a baby, and she invited me to the shower. So I've had the opportunity to make some long-term relationships with these people over the last almost 4.5 years. So the MP residency program, as you all know, not all of them have national accreditation. And that was one of the jobs that they gave me the task of. And I said, I can do this. I've been through accreditation before at FAU, and I did some work with surgical facilities, a lot of work with actually getting accreditation for surgical facilities. And so we went through the accreditation process with this consortium, I'll call it. They have a lot of initials in there that always kind of trips me up a little bit. And so the forms that we used and developed, really, we got a lot of guidance from this consortium that started in Connecticut with Margaret Flinter, who probably many of you know her work. She's sort of the godmother of NP residency programs. And you can see the little dots all over the place. Those are residency programs that are all over the country. So when I looked at our forms, what we had, I incorporated some of those things that we used in the residency program, and I didn't make a lot of it up. A lot of it came from the guidance that we see from this consortium. They recently this year actually got the US certificate so that they can actually like CCNE, I can't remember, from the Department of Education. So that was a big process for them. And so that's kind of my background and where I sort of get my ideas about evaluation is from what I developed there, and of course what we did at FAU as well. And then I also had the opportunity to participate in a faculty development program. We were HRSA funded. We were able to get funding for our residency program, and part of that requires that you have an academic affiliation. And so our academic affiliation was UCSF, which is kind of ironic because that was my school that I graduated from with my my BSN in nursing and also my first master's in nursing as well. So I was thrilled to be able to participate in this program. And the program was called Teach for UCSF, and it was all on Zoom, and it was a collaborative program that the nurses at UCSF and our our colleagues there were part of the presentations. It was really nice to see nursing being represented in these workshops that were very, very detailed. So if you took all the courses, I mean, it was hours and hours of coursework, but I took the courses on giving feedback and how to help students with or residents, rather, learners in general, with presenting the patients to the preceptor and their critical thinking skills. And I was very, very impressed with that. And what I really am hoping to do, and I've made contact and met twice already with our colleagues in the College of Medicine, and they were very interested in doing a collaborative approach and putting on a workshop, Teach for FAU. Well, we can't really call it that, but we're working on our first workshop, which will really help clinicians in the clinical setting, specifically our preceptors. One of the things that I did as well in my role was help develop the preceptors. That's a big part of accreditation. What are you doing? How are you developing your faculty, the residency faculty? How are you developing your preceptors as well? And so that's something I'm hoping to work on with the College of Medicine. We have a meeting coming up this week and we'll probably have our first workshop. I have a Canvas site set up and have information on there, and hopefully we'll do some recordings and do a big event. So hopefully that will turn out the way I'm hoping it will. Because, a lot of us in the MP program have been preceptors for years, and did we ever really get any training to do that? Not so much. And so providing that kind of help to our preceptors, I think, is helpful. So as I was going through this, I thought, well, what are the objectives when you evaluate students? Got this little box right in my way here. Let me move that. What are some of the goals and objectives when you're evaluating learners? And a lot of it is really giving them feedback. And one of the things I have to say that in the residency program that I would say from day one is this is a safe learning place, because these are all NPs that come in, they've got their license, they should be ready to go. Well, they're not ready to go. And so we found so many gaps. And what I used to tell them was, it's okay if you don't know, like, let me know that you don't know this, because then we're going to go over it and help you learn that. So I think when you provide a safe environment for learning that's non-threatening, that demonstrates caring. And it shows that by giving feedback, that you care about that learner-teacher relationship, and that it's really an expression of the commitment. And so when you're giving feedback, you want to do it in the spirit of dialogue rather than downloading. We did a peer evaluation, so I was charged with evaluating some of my physician colleagues that were faculty members, and that's a little nerve-wracking when you're evaluating your peers, right? And so what they really recommended is that you have a discussion. First of all, you meet with them beforehand and go over the goals, and you go through the scenario, and we would do direct observation, and then we would let the preceptor say, well, we would ask them, well, how do you think you did? And so it's really a dialogue and a conversation, not you passed, you got a 3 or a 4 or 5 on that. And I think that really represents the caring philosophy and sort of a shift. It's not a rating scale so much as it is really a dialogue. So also just considering the learner's goal and readiness, their prior experience, and then just some of these other objectives and goals are just things that I've learned along the way that I think can help people when they're giving this sort of feedback. So one of the things that sort of a major shift in the evaluation tools that we use was this scale. And so you should recognize this. And I presented this before as well when we changed our documents. And got away from a rating scale that was a 1 through 4, 1 through 5, which was below average, average, above average, and excellent. And they had numbers attached to it. Whereas this scale is different. It's sort of skill acquisition. So I was thinking maybe we should call this, instead of a rating scale, how about skill acquisition? It makes a lot more sense. And so this is really to assess the level of development of the competencies, the skills. And so I don't know who this Dreyfus person is, but you can see that a lot of this comes from Benner, which I really liked. And so what I'd like to do is really show you how we incorporated that scale into our evaluation forms and sort of the pieces of it. So I'm going to stop sharing this and then I'll come back to it. And I just want to show you the form, that how we used this form. And first I have to explain that this form is unique to the MP program. This is a form that the clinical faculty would use, and it would help guide them through the visit. And so originally this form was just organized sort of head to toe as far as what you did when you had an encounter with a patient. And Beth King said, you have to put in the 6 C's. And I'm like, how can I do that? And I did it. And I'm not sure if I got all the items in the right place, but it looks a lot better, ties into our philosophy in organizing in that manner. I didn't mean to jump ahead so much, but basically this is the rating scale that we developed. And I was thinking, instead of calling it a rating scale, we could say that it's skill acquisition rather than a rating scale. And so we start off by explaining what this is, and that students in the beginning courses, of which we listed, would be expected to get to a level of competence by the end of the semester. So it really allows them the feel that, yes, this is all new to you, and being a novice and an advanced beginner is okay. And then we're expecting you to grow in your clinical skills as you move along. And so this is what the form looks like. I'm just trying to table down here. Won't let me move. Are you guys seeing the form? Are you
Yes,
guys?
but it's not moving down.
Why is it not moving down? Okay, there it is. There it goes. Sorry. Okay, so basically I put a lot of explanations in here on where the learning domains come from, stems from the objectives, the essentials, and the QSEN, that the rating scale is adapted from beginner, expert to novice. And a lot of people were concerned about that. They were concerned about the fact that the expert, nobody's going to be an expert. And I think it's very clear, and especially if you read in the beginning, that we don't expect students to be expert. That would be maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years out. However, when you look at some of our objectives, people could be an expert in a particular objective. And I'll show you some one of the other self-evaluation forms that is guided with the course objectives. But this is the site visit again. And so the major change in this form is with this rating scale, and then it's organized around the 6 C's. So comportment, we started with that because we wanted to see, we're observing everything that goes on during the visit. Did they introduce you to the preceptor, to the patient, ask permission, and so on. So the rest of it is very specific for the MPs, and Beth actually tweaked it so that she could use it as well for the psych MP students as well. So most of it falls under the becoming competent, because there's a lot of skills. They're super, super specific, compassion, confidence, attending to conscience. And so I'm not going to read all the little things in here, but it ends with just recommendations for improvement and student strengths. And so this is basically what we came up with. And I'd love to hear what the Caring Scholars think about this. Again, it's a pilot right now. I don't consider myself a caring scholar, but I consider myself a very caring professor towards my students, and the way I want to give them feedback and help them progress. And this is just one small piece of how we evaluate the students. We have a grading rubric for the lab, and this is 30%. And it actually, it's one shot in time that we're observing the student, and there's usually a second site visit. So when we actually give them a grade for the site visit, it's more based on their progression and how they're gaining confidence. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
Lynn, I know this is Terry. I know you're opening it up to the group. I just wanted to say one thing that Dr. Boykin taught me early on was that we are all scholars of caring science by nature of being a part of FAU, Christine Eland College of Nursing. That's students, faculty, everybody. And I try to remember that. So I beg to differ. I think you're a scholar of caring science.
thank you. Any thoughts? I'm happy. Actually, these are all posted on the, not everybody's a part of the master's committee, but anybody who wants to really, if I could send them to you and get some specific feedback, that would be great, because again, it's sort of work in progress to do this. Change this form around. Students always felt a little intimidated. What do you mean I didn't get a 5? And this is really more acquisition of skills. And it's like, no, you don't need to get a 5. You're all in that learning phase. So I'm not sure how it's going to pan out. We did have clinical faculty input, and we'll see what they have to say, because they are the ones that are taking this form and using it during their site visits. But it's pretty concrete that they can really give good feedback based on everything that we're looking for. And the students have access to this too, so they know well before the visit, this is what we're going to be looking for. This is what we expect. But I think of course, it's very threatening having a faculty member come and watch you. I think, Mary Ellen, you may have watched me with Dr. Martorell. You may have done a site visit on me when I was in the postmaster certificate program. You did, didn't you?
Did. And
oh my God.
Yeah, isn't that fun? What struck me, Lynn, is when you talked about the discussion and creating this culture of safety. And that goes so well with the interdisciplinary look at cultures of safety. In other words, in every part of our practice, we have to have a culture of safety to raise our hand and say, this doesn't look right. The honesty and the trust of building that culture of safety. So I think it's elegant to tie it here to the evaluation and continue to build that sense. And it doesn't matter what discipline you're in. I think about my husband's a nuclear engineer with nuclear science, and they really have to build a culture of safety, because someone's got to raise their hand or they're going to have a
Mary Ellen. Okay. You froze for a moment. You froze.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do
just
that
for a
from time
moment.
I do that. The internet here is a little unstable, so I apologize.
You're on top of a mountain. I remember
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and the ETSU is in a very rural area, so we do have an unstable internet. I apologize, but everywhere in surgery, the timeout, and so if we can continue to build that. With saying we have room for improvement here, and that honesty of that, I think it really builds. And that point was so beautifully articulated in what you said about a discussion rather than a rating, so thank you.
Yeah, I love that
Okay,
idea
can I
too.
say something, Lynn?
Yes.
Hi, it's good to
Cynthia!
see everyone. Yeah, I'm
Oh
in the
my
house, y'all.
goodness. Oh my goodness.
Yes, I had frequent attempts to join the group, but I said, well, come January, I am going to be. So this is January, and it's an awesome opportunity to see my colleagues and to share my little bit. So I'm reading this, and clearly I'm hearing about it for the first time. I have not been keeping up to date with just about everything, but just looking at the skill level on that little table there that you have. And I'm seeing where you mentioned competence. And I wonder if we're looking at skills acquisition, can we just take one of the 6 C's and put it there and it be okay for skills acquisitions? In as much as you're talking about students and their skill set in the clinical settings or maybe in the classroom or whatever, but do we believe that their skill set, if they're competent only and there is none of the other ingredients, can we take one out? And one of the reasons I'm saying that, someone brought to our attention not long ago that we cannot split up the Roach's 6 C's and use just the ones that we want. And there was a reference for it. So there
Can
was a
you reorder?
citation for that
Can you
recommendation.
reorder them though? Can you reorder them? I mean, these
I think
we
I
have,
had
they're
that.
all there, but they were slightly reordered.
Lynn, I think I
Okay.
had some of the same reaction
So-
that Dr. Archibald has. And
Yeah.
that is, I could look at any one of these under the becoming competent, and I could look at it in terms of how was compassion expressed in that skill? How was commitment expressed in that skill? I'm not saying you should revise this thing to have a huge form, but I'm just thinking if I, as a teacher, were using this form, I would look at each skill that you're addressing there and think, okay, how is this person on competence? How is this person on confidence? How is this person on compassion? In the expression of this skill. It's kind of, I think, what Dr. Archibald is saying, is it?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. And it might just mean we use different words that convey the same message of competence and conscience and comportment and all of that, if we're using one of the 6 C's. Again, that's just my...
Yeah, that is really a different way of looking at it. And I know I struggled with people having ideas and wanting to put things in place. And I said, why don't you play with it and see what you come up with? Because I'm not really sure how to do that. And so if you could like send me a little email and give me an example of that, because again, we are really open to doing that and, changing things around. We're taking little baby steps here because this originally it was organized in a different manner. And the rating scale was a 1 through 5. So I think I understand what both of you are trying to say and how you would do that. but I think it would look differently. I'm very visual. If you want to send me like a little box and say, how about trying something like this? I would be, that would be grateful.
What I'm envisioning is, this is kind of crazy. And like I said, again, I don't suggest that you have a humongous evaluation tool. But what I'm envisioning is for every one of those points under competence, there's almost like a little flower, a cluster for each of the 6 C's. And then you could give a very brief description of how each of the 6 C's was or was not expressed
Right.
there, and use those clusters then to be the basis for a narrative, for a paragraph narrative narrative summary.
So we do have another tool that we're using, which is a little broader based on the objectives. This, for instance, we have one of the items: reviews records adequately and interprets lab data and diagnostics. So how would you take that particular item there? And clearly competence would be one, maybe confidence. How would you work that into what you're suggesting?
Well, conscience would be a major corollary there, right? Conscience would be a major corollary for that particular skill.
And also competence
That's
as well.
interesting. This is Beth. That's a really interesting way of thinking about this. This was an initial step. The 6 C's were never part of this tool. So the students nor the clinical instructors were utilizing the language of the 6 C's as much as one would like, one would hope. So this is one way to initiate the language of caring and the 6 C's with our clinical faculty, many of whom are adjunct. But I think what you and Cynthia have brought forward could be another step. Probably not that we're piloting this one this semester, but that thought is very interesting for the future work, Lynn.
I agree. I'm
Yeah.
not sure. I'm not sure. It's something we could definitely play with. And when you get these ideas, you just gotta like throw it out there and see what it would look like. And so if anybody can throw me a little box and and I'm happy to send this to you as well to see how we could do that. And I do agree. We were really negligent in not using the 6 C's. These were done in probably 2012. Of course, we had the 6 C's then as well, but they were all of the skills here. You can find the C's in those skills, like having were the decisions patient-centered and so on. And so they were actually in there. They just weren't probably as transparent or visible to people. But I mean, I could spot them and I know what it is that we were looking for in those visits. And that's
okay. So Lynn, can you just put it in parentheses next to the, looking at the skill? Can you just put such identified representation of compassion or competence? Maybe if you put it next to it, since it's obvious in there. I'm not sure.
Oh, you mean sort of map it out? Yeah.
Yeah, just write it in there. Like, for example, if you see proficient as being whatever that might look like to you, how you've seen it, then just put it in parentheses so that we know that it's not lost.
Lynn?
Yes.
Oh, Cynthia, did you finish? Because I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, well, I will never finish, Dr. Boykin.
That's true.
You can always interrupt me, Dean.
I just wrote a couple of little notes, and one of the things that might be important from a perspective of the caring, coming from a caring curriculum, is in the preamble to this or something to talk about the goal of knowing self and other as caring person. I mean, that the teacher and the student, that reciprocal intentional process of coming to know each other as caring person is really critical. And I also wonder, what is this kind of crazy? But instead of a title, since these 6 C's, Sister Simone talks about them as the professionalization of nursing, what if the scale was something like growing in the professionalization of caring? Or maybe that's not exactly worded right, but it's the intention that we never really fail. We're growing. We're always growing. So there's no failure. So this growing in, I don't know, growing in the professionalization of caring, it's growing in caring, but it's using her professionalization of the components. One other thought I had, what was that? Can you go down to conscience for me, Lynn? Can you just skip down a minute?
Sure.
Thank you. I think it's there where it says advocates for personal values and ethical beliefs. I didn't catch it. And just thinking about, advocating, responding to that which matters to the person.
Yeah, and that kind of appears somewhere else, and I think it's under compassion.
Yeah, it's hard to read it all.
Person-centered language.
Mhm.
Discussion, what matters most to the patient and sets an agenda for the visit.
Mhm.
Again, I tried to incorporate things in there and still make it a tool that had utility for clinical faculty. And I think our clinical faculty are versed. I mean, they look at the syllabus, and I think they are versed as well, but making it something actual that's usable as well to them, that was kind of the goals and what we were doing here. So there is another evaluation tool that's a self-reflection of the student, and then that's shared together with the faculty members that we did some revisions on as well. And I think that one has more of the conversation piece, and I'm happy to show you that one as well, unless you have more suggestions on this tool itself.
I'd like to just say something to sort of consolidate what Anne and Cynthia have said. And I think what Anne said brings it to the point where we're not studying a skill, we're studying nursing, which is nurturing persons. I don't forget how you say it at FAU, but nurturing persons in their wholeness or something through caring. Mm-hmm. That's what we're expecting them to learn, and that's what we're asking them to demonstrate. So it's a matter of which is the tool, which is the instrument, and which is the goal. So I think just like the suggestion Anne made about adding the knowing each other is caring, and also the retitling, it tells you what this is about. It's not about learning that action. It's about learning that action as an expression of caring and nursing.
Yeah. So
I understand you're talking, this is not just nursing, is it? It's interdisciplinary, or is it?
No, it is for our program.
Okay.
The MPs, FMPs, AGMPs, and the psych. And again, it's a small it's not the only evaluation tool that we have. It is the tool that's used when the faculty visit the NP students and the clinical site.
And just to add something, we do want to do exactly what you're talking about, but we also have to think about, they have to be able to do the advanced practice and be able to prescribe and to assess and prescribe, treat that patient. So we expect by primary 3 that they are not only considering all of the factors that you've talked about, but they are able to do this. And that's really important that that's included in here in the way that she's writing this. So because if not, we don't know that they're competent in those ways, that they're able to actually go out and practice as an advanced practice nurse.
I think, Lynn, I think you've done the best job that I've seen in trying to articulate something like this. So congratulations to you for this hard work. And I don't think it would take a lot to just reframe it a little bit.
I would love to hear your ideas on that, and I'll email the actual forms to you. And I would love to hear from you. So we got feedback from not everybody, because people just don't always have time, but this would be really helpful. If I could email that, I'm sure you guys all have the same, the FAU email, or is there another email?
No, it's FAU.
FAU's email. Okay, yeah, I'll go ahead and send that out, and feel free to play with it. I mean, again, you just got to throw it out there and see what it looks like, and see if it works. But I would like to show you the other one.
Then one other thought, though,
Yes.
we could add put it in our syllabus and add it to this, in the syllabus. I love some of the language that we talked about in terms of the culture of safety. We could
Yeah.
do
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Yeah, you're right. And I'm not sure
and I know I
exactly
don't have it in mind, but that would be a great
Yeah.
and the language of what Sabina and Anne have said, and I see Mary Ellen's writing something there too.
Yeah.
We could put that in our policy statement just to help begin reframing some of our thinking about evaluation with students.
Yeah, and I wonder if we will be revising our objectives as well. I don't know if that would fall into that category, but definitely something for the syllabus. But that's very philosophical, really, and something that should be articulated somewhere.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
not
just happy that you initiated us to get this into the NP track, because it was not, it wasn't as evident in the past.
I like
not in this tool. Yeah.
I said I like the idea of creating some kind of preamble, like you described, kind of lay out these principles of evaluation that are larger, philosophical.
Great term. We could call it principles.
Yeah,
I like that. Yeah, principles of evaluation. I think I can play with that too. If you'd like to send me a little blurb, that would be great. But the light bulb went off in my head. I definitely think there's an area in there, because we do talk about students not having an expectation of getting the highest mark in this, because they're never going to get that we expect progression. We want them to be competent, at a minimum, be competent in those skills. And that could be up here somewhere. I'm going to play with it, but if you have a little paragraph or something that you'd like to send me, I'll try and work it in there as well, because I think I definitely could work that in there. It would be in this one, because this. Yeah.
Lynn, this is Terry.
Hi, Terry.
I remember years ago that Chris Swanson spoke about the healing trinity at IAHC, and she said that was caring, safety, and leadership. And I'm thinking about that in terms of the language that you have here and in the call for a preamble here. I'm stuck a little bit because I've spent a lot of time studying Benner's work in the other sector and spent a lot of days with her. Dreyfus and Dreyfus, they were brothers. They used skill acquisition. She actually used competency in her languaging in her books. Like she said, that to get to expertise, you had to have repetitive experiences with similar situations, which I understand in terms of isolated competency formation, but in your other evaluative tool, I wonder, do we get to them sharing a nursing situation where they feel they've lived the professional attributes of caring?
Yes, and
Okay.
I can show you that. So again, this was one just for that site visit. I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to pull up the next form, which was revised as well. Show all the windows.
Yeah, I'm kind of eager to see that, because I wonder when I graduated, I would have the opportunity to have my reflections to show that I was always growing, getting back to what either Anne or Savina said.
Yes. Yes. So this one also, there are a couple major changes on this one as well. So we call this form the student self-evaluation, faculty evaluation. So the purpose of this is for the students to reflect on the objectives of the course. And so this one, we added as well this rating scale or skill acquisition. I sort of put this in red, and I was just a few minutes ago thinking maybe skill level isn't the right word for that. And we had the same sort of preamble here in what students would be expected to do. So it's the same as the other form, but this evaluation form reflection has the objectives as stated. And so as you know what the objectives look like for the MP program, the verb for the objective is leveled. So they start out with some of your basic verbs, and then as they progress through, the skills are the same, but we expected a different verb. I hope that makes sense, because the whole leveling of these tools is something that we had put a lot of time trying to figure out, well, how do we do that without having another form for each one, because they're all based on the objectives. So basically, what we had students do prior to this kind of revision was that the students had to make a statement on each objective. And so by the end of the semester, they had reflections on each of the objectives. And we got feedback from faculty, clinical faculty, as well as didactic faculty, that wouldn't it be as effective for them to do one reflection on each of the C's based on those, based on the objectives, and possibly they could take one objective and say, how are they meeting the objectives of becoming competent, and then providing goals. So there's an area that the student has to reflect on each of those, and then the faculty will have, again, this conversation with them as they go over their reflections. And so we put a little box at the end. One of the students who reviewed these forms, because we said we wanted a brief clinical example, and she said, how about narrowing that down? And so I put in the 3 to 5 sentences. I think a lot of people are not going to be able to do much in 3 to 5 sentences. However, like Mark Twain said, if he had had more time, he would have written a shorter letter. So I think it is important for them to be concise about that. But this is where the students' reflections come in, and that was the major change. It's that we added the scale, as you see, and we have them doing a reflection midterm and again at the end on how they're meeting those objectives. And they journal too. That is a piece that's also evaluated as well. So in our journaling, we have very specific instructions about providing a clinical situation where they demonstrated their caring in that particular situation. I can't remember exactly how it's stated, but it's very elegant, more so than what I just said. So those are actually part of their grade, like a 10% as well. So those are evaluated, and that does give an opportunity to be a little bit more verbose about it. So basically we went through, and these are just our objectives, and we don't change any of those. So all we did for this evaluation tool is to have the students make sure they've read them, know what the objectives are, and then a brief reflection. And then at the bottom, we added the conversation piece. So it's really an assessment of their self-evaluation, their reflections, their goals, and then the clinical faculty's recommendations to help the student achieve those goals. So that's done at midterm, and that's done at the final. So we're not, it's not perfect. There's always a balance between what you ask students to do and faculty to read, but I do think it does make the students reflect on the objectives. And the objectives sometimes, they're a little broad and a little redundant in many ways. But we're hoping to collect some good exemplars of what students are saying and examples that they've given, so that we'll be able to give those to Kay for the self-study. I've asked all the clinical faculty to tell me what they've said with their permission, and let's get together some of those thoughts. So it's an improvement, I think, from what we had before. I don't know that we're there yet. So
Living document.
Excuse me?
It's a living document.
Yeah, it's work in progress, and again, for CCNE purposes, we had to review these forms, and so we just didn't go through and stamp it and say this was reviewed in 2022 to meet that requirement. We really put some thought into it, and it changed it enough that I think it reflects some thought. And it was a small group. We did put these through to the master's committee to pilot the forms, so we'll hopefully get some good feedback. But it would be great to get feedback from you all to see how you think we're doing in general. I can tell you in a residency program, just in general, I mean, they have the same sort of scrutiny. I wrote the self-study for the residency program for the accreditation, and it's so similar. And they were happy with this, and the consortiums, the individuals in Connecticut that do these types of programs, all use something sort of similar to this. FAU's is unique because it's got the caring essentials in there, and I think that's super helpful.
My as I look at this, it looks fine. One thing, I keep going back to, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? And what we're doing is helping people learn to nurture persons through caring, right? That's the way you conceptualize it at FAU. So that should always, the FAU statement of nursing should always be in these, at the top of these things, I would think. It's to remind people, you're not here to learn to diagnose an illness for the sake of diagnosing an illness. You're here learning about diagnosing an illness for the purpose of promoting wellness and wholeness through caring, right? So it always has to come back to that. And my other thought is, I know it's tempting when things are listed out, it's tempting to deal with them one by one, but I think FAU has chosen the 6 C's as the core glue for the curriculum. And it would be my thinking that a student would describe a nursing situation and talk about all C's in that nursing situation. Yes, some of them jump out. Some of them are more readily recognizable in a situation. but actually all those C's ought to be recognizable with some thought in any nursing situation.
I know that that's part of the reflective journal and the instructions that are provided. So if it needs to be part of the evaluation tool, it seems like it should be articulated as an objective or objectives. And I think it is. I'm not sure. Again, these objectives were things that we can't really change, but we will be looking at them soon, very soon. I think even in the spring, we'll be looking at them.
Sabina, the listing, the listing of 6 Cs is in all the syllabuses. So, the 6 Cs are listed out with objectives under each one. So the listing of this in the evaluation tool with, statements or objectives on each one, sort of match what we currently have in place.
Yeah.
But that clustering would be really interesting too. And I think about, but I also, the preamble, that's a great idea of a preamble and including in there the statement of what nursing is according to our philosophy.
I'm going back, I guess, to Meyerhoff's alternating rhythm, or I would want them always to see the individual C's and always see those as a whole complex of caring all at once, the part and the whole all at once.
Yes.
One of the things that I think is always challenging in teaching, being a student, and anyone in this dance, is connecting all of it.
Yeah.
And so by saying that, well, the reflective journal is where you really think about your caring, and the competency checklist is where you think about your skills, and this other thing is where you think about whatever. It makes it even more divisive for everyone in the dance. So the more that we can bring that all together, where the C's are in the syllabus, and there may be some things that are listed to express those C's as skills, because the skills are expressions of caring, the more we can help all of us connect these. So by having it more reflective in the preamble and represented more in the form, helps all of us connect in the dance, that it's not separate. The reflective journal is the time you think about your caring, but this is the time you express your skills, and this is the time you do that. So bringing all of that in that consistency, I think, would really help all of us gel and live the caring components,
And maybe the heading, like we talked about earlier, just as a suggestion, that growing in the professionalization of caring would head every tool. Every tool does that. They're all about how we grow in our caring for the purpose of practice. So I think that might be one way, Mary Ellen, that kind of like, this is a whole, this is, one.
Mhm.
So, and listening to everybody, I've been thinking, we have to go towards competency-based education. We know that's from AACN. And we haven't looked at the undergrad evaluation rubric yet, but we will be. So I think it's a really interesting thought that maybe we're looking at this incorrectly, because we have the 6 C's and we put the objective under the C's. But as Dr. Schoenhofer said, we need to look at those objectives and think broadly of how they each fit the 6 C's. So looking at the undergraduate evaluation, we have competencies. So for instance, we have interprofessional communication. Rather than fitting that into a C, what we need to help the students understand is how is caring expressed, as Marianne said, in interprofessional communication. So looking at each of the C's, within the topic or competency of interprofessional communication. I think we're doing it the other way, but I think that would really help the students. What does it mean to be caring through interprofessional communication? That make sense? Because we're going to have to look at, and I hate to say this, we're going to have to look at competencies. That's 1C. It's a skill. I know that. But that's what we're going to be asked to do. We have to identify the skills. But yet where we could be unique is then looking at those skills within the caring framework. So taking the skill that is maybe an essential, like interprofessional communication, or even informatics, what does that mean from a caring perspective? Because I think students struggle with that, to be honest, and listening to stories from clinical, especially, the students are really focused on learning skills. They want to learn the complex skills. And it's more difficult to get them to the point of really looking at nurturing the wholeness. They want to learn just the skills. They want to do things with their hands. So I think it's a different way of looking at it, but it made me think differently. So thanks for the dialogue.
I think, Joy, that's really an important point that you're bringing out. And maybe, rather than, I don't know, what is it like to be in communication, but how do we live caring? How not rather than even being, but how did I live my caring in that situation? And how did I grow from that in that situation?
I guess I wonder if competence, as Roach described it, is limited to skills. Aren't we talking about competence in caring? Wouldn't that be reflected? Isn't that really what we're looking for when we're talking about competency-based?
Competency and compassion, for example.
But if you look at objective 2, I think it's objective 2, under becoming competent, the last part of that statement, it says to enhance the health and well-being of persons across the lifespan. So it is embedded in this tool. Perhaps it needs reframed and a little bit tweaked, but and I think some of the ideas that have been presented today are really excellent for us to keep growing in figuring out how to develop caring-based evaluation tools.
Yeah, I think back, when you're talking about skills, like learning how to do a pelvic exam on a female, and Mary Ellen, I'm gonna point to you again, because I remember you had that gown on and you ripped it all apart and said, why would you want to put a person in this gown that was so flimsy? And it's not just about being able to find the cervix. It's about your approach, and there's so much that goes into it, and that's what we're looking at when we're looking at that skill, those skills. And even though it's a checkoff sheet, it's listed on there as an item. Did you explain it to the patient? Did you show compassion? Your patient is older and has hip problems. Did you accommodate their position, and so on? So there's a lot of those skills that it's not just a check off. You did it right. Did you do it with demonstrating all of the things that we've taught you that are important in being a caring clinician? And I would say yes, that we do that, and that the checkoff form doesn't reflect that. I think there's a lot of language in there that alludes to those things that we think are important, that we know are important.
Those are great examples, and I just wanted to add one other thing, and that's in this preamble or beginning where you're talking about the process of evaluation. I was thinking that Mayeroff's, ingredients of caring, for example, could be really helpful there too, because when we think about honesty and humility and knowing and hope, and all of that is embedded in that process that we'd want to be with our students in the process of evaluation. So something to think about. And of course, his definition too of helping the other to grow is.
I just pulled this book off the shelf, Living a Caring-Based Program. And in the last chapter about evaluation, it says, the very first paragraph, that the practice of evaluation, I'll skip some of it, but the practice of evaluation, the central to the evaluation component is the assumption that the nature of being human is to be caring and to be free to choose values, aspirations, and desires that give meaning to living. Anyway, it goes on to say things like evaluation must be approached as more than objectives, compliance, outcomes, and measurements. It's what we're really talking about. So we might even go back and look at some of this language to use in that preamble.
Yeah.
Oh, good. We can use that one for our CC&E evaluation too.
Yeah, so you have homework. Alpalma and
We all do.
that's just a preamble. Just it's got to be short and sweet. And let's take a look at that. I really do like that idea. The preamble with the things that you've mentioned.
You know, I'm not an artist, but I'll try and draw it for you. But what I'm envisioning is a center that says nurturing persons in their wholeness, or I can't ever think of how you say it. Have that sentence in the center, and then everything else is around it. And that way, the particular item up here in this corner, it never gets disconnected from the why. It's the why that creates the meaning, right?
Well, I could see that, Lena. We would click on whatever we see as prominent and give an explanation as to why we clicked on that. But I could see that. I think that's a great first step. And I do like the idea of in the center is that enhancement of health and well-being of the person, to help students, for faculty, all of us to remember this, but it could be fun to try and do that. The fact that we have 6 C's in this document is a great first step, because it hasn't been there before in 20 years, probably.
Right.
That's a great first step.
It is.
Absolutely.
So we need to remember that. And the fact, I love the fact, Lynn, that you sort of organized it around the, novice to advanced beginner to competency.
Nice.
Yeah, because we, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I agree. It's so much better
Yeah.
than what we had, and really the integration of the 6 C's, I think, are wonderful.
And I also love what Joy mentioned, that this can be used as a model for the other programs as well, as we work towards the undergraduate evaluation tool and how to actually organize that. So this is just a really wonderful start.
Yeah.
We could certainly put, even though we don't, Mayeroff's, how many ingredients? Does he have 8? He has 8, doesn't he? 8?
Yeah.
We could put those in there. Certainly, we could try it out, and I don't know. It's just we would have to go through our programs committee, so we didn't do that stuff yet.
It's part of the language of caring. The more faculty use, the more faculty phrase their thoughts to themselves, to each other, and to students using that language of caring, the more it all hangs together.
It does. I don't know why we didn't use both in the beginning. Marlene, do you know?
You mean in the course syllabi?
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I do think that Mayeroff gives you this language of how you are, like being in a situation or in process, as a caring way of being is to me his gift, and how defining caring is helping the other to grow. So I don't know why, Beth, but I think that Mayeroff could be useful in that preamble, talking about this process of evaluation that Lynn already described as a dialogue. And, and so it's like, what's in that dialogue? Well, honesty's in the dialogue, humility, trust, those kinds of things are part of this process.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. And also, one thing I learned in the before doing the peer evaluation is to talk to get goals, like before you start doing any kind of evaluation, and then follow up later, with your responses to that. I think that's really helpful to do. And another thing that I witnessed was when you're giving feedback. Let's say you're watching a preceptor precept a student or a resident, and then instead of just you did this, you did that, it's like, how do you think you did? Like, what are your thoughts? Because they actually showed a very interesting encounter, and these were, I think, medical residents, and the preceptor was pretty awful, and he kind of knew it, because at the end, when they were having their dialogue about it, I mean, he mentioned everything. Yeah, I think I kind of dissed this person when they were trying to say this, that, and the other, and it was really a good example. But it helped, because the person that was doing the peer evaluation didn't have to really bring up those things, because the person who, they were very able to reflect, and then they had the dialogue about it. And I think that's just a really good way to approach things, is to let students, let residents or whatever say, well, how do you think that went? If you could do it again, is there anything that you might change about it? Why would you do that? So just my thoughts about that.
Okay. Well, so we had 2 discussion points. Do you want to stop sharing, Lynn? I think we covered a majority of them, or most of the topics. I only had 2, but let's see if there's something else. That's okay. So one was identifying components of the caring-based evaluation tool for clinical practice. And I think the addition of Mayeroff is important. And then just looking at organization. Nope, that's learning. I'm sorry. Reading, not discussion points. So how can caring science be used for identifying, measuring competencies? And we talked about that. And then I think one of the things we struggle with, because we use the same evaluation tool across courses. So for the NPs, primary 1, 2, and 3 have the same evaluation tool. For the undergrad,
it is different. It is different, Joy.
It is different.
Yeah, it is different, because we use the same site visit form, but the evaluation tool is based on the objectives, and the objectives are different, and for each course, and they're mostly different because the verb, the action verb for what we expect them to do is at a higher, more complex level. Like, they apply it, whereas maybe in primary 1, they discuss it or they identify, and then at the end they have to be able to apply it or synthesize and so on. So each of those evaluation tools for the faculty and student self-evaluation are leveled. The checkoff form for the site visit is not leveled, because they're all doing the same skills. So the leveling would be what would be expected at a primary 1, 2, and then a 3, and that's in that kind of preamble.
Okay, I apologize. I think I misunderstood the last time we talked. Because in the undergrad, we don't have it. We have one clinical evaluation tool, even though the courses have different objectives. So in looking at how the students are meeting the objectives at the level they're at, I'm not sure we're accomplishing that. But I did look at our undergrad evaluation tool. Like I said, we haven't revised it, and it has critical elements, and I think that most of the expectations for caring are captured in the critical elements. So I think that's more like your summary, Lynn. You know, you have your check if they're novice to expert, but I think what our tool probably mimics is that second piece of your evaluation tool. Right. So that is what we wanted to present for feedback, and I think everybody really presented great ideas. I know it gave me a lot to think about in going forward with our evaluation tool in the undergrad program. And Lynn, I hope you got some good feedback for your development as well. So I think Dr. Ray, we're a little bit early. I don't know if there's anything else.
Well, I don't hear any other responses, but may I ask also, I resonated with Sabina in relationship to caring and the holistic idea, since, you know, our definition of caring is nurturing the wholeness of caring, and let's see, nurturing the wholeness of persons in the environment through caring, you know. So I looked at that holistic notion relative to Roach's 6 C's and what Sabina had said in terms of even within the context of evaluation of student learning and competencies, of the integration of those, you know, 6 C's. And I see them also, like, rather than maybe putting commitment at the end of the linguistic narrative there, but putting, you know, like commitment almost first, and then conscience, the ethical piece, and then compassion, you know, so that our students are, you know, can resonate with those ideas within their consciousness. And so I wondered if I may ask Sabina just to reiterate her perspective again within the context of competency, but how she integrates the 6 C's within her, you know, the way that she's communicating that. Would you mind, Sabina?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I could say that again, but let me tell you what I'm thinking right now. I know a lot of you guys have been through this more than once, and some may not have been through it once, but a curriculum is a system. And when you're tinkering with one element of the system, that's going to resonate throughout the entire system. So, and I see Joy recognizes this.
Yep.
So any work that you do, I don't care if it's at the MP evaluation level or the objectives level in the undergraduate or whatever, it's all connected. And any change in one element resonates and requires change throughout the entire system. So I hope you know what you're getting into. It's a lot of fun. But I think I wasn't there when the faculty chose the 6 C's as the core of studying caring, but yeah, what I think is, when you're studying nursing, especially nursing situations, all those C's ought to be visible in any nursing situation. And the same, I think the same with Meyerhoff's ingredients. They're all there in any nursing situation.
Yes, they are. I was thinking about Meroff and courage and how important it is for students in undergraduate or graduate, and NP programs. That whole idea of courage is so critical, isn't it? Where Meroff talks about that with, I think that's one of his last ingredients, and how important that is. And we see that today, of course, in clinical practice, where such a demand of our professional nurses, and the courage that they have to have in today's complexity of healthcare and complex systems today, and where these systems are clinical systems generally are operated by people who don't have much knowledge about the that human to human caring relationship. They just see it, like you said earlier, just with a curriculum, Sabina, as a system, so to speak, and not what the meaning of that system is, today.
And that's the other piece that I didn't mention, was always having always having that statement at the center of any, because that's what the whole enterprise is about.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that's taught or learned has to be connected to that enterprise, has to advance that enterprise.
Well, and we use that, in our definition when we say persons and the environment, right? Like we have that holistic perspective, so if we focus a little bit on that, we can see how it unfolds, in practice and in the way in which we might be evaluating students. So,
and the faculty has to accept the responsibility to always be moving back and forth.
Yes.
So zeroing in on a specific thing and never moving away from that until they've connected it back to the whole.
And that's Meroff's alternating rhythms too, isn't it? So, just maybe in this new development, how Roach and Meroff's and our own definition come together as a whole, for the purposes of teaching and learning. So
There, now it's time for a new book on the college. Once you get this all worked out, it's time for a new book.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, I wanted to say that knowledge, the first essential knowledge for nursing practice doesn't refer to a course in nursing theory or it has to be, we have to see it. Knowledge for nursing, like nursing knowledge, we have to see it everywhere in the curriculum. So, this is a good example of what you did with this evaluation tool. So you're integrating this knowledge of caring, because that's so important to our particular curriculum. But throughout the curriculum, there should be, in the practice courses, in the evaluation, nursing knowledge reflected, nursing theory reflected in there. So
yes. Are there any other comments that faculty have and our speakers as well? And no?
Thank you. It was excellent. And I just agree that it's been, first of all, this dialogue has been wonderful with how you did this, sharing something that we could respond to. So that was wonderful. But so much, I know what the evaluation tools looked like before. So Lynn, congratulations and thank you.
Yes, I agree. Congratulations.
Well, I wish you guys had been on the committee and you could have really could have tweaked these things a little bit more and maybe had the language change a little bit. We also went in and tried to put as many holistic terms in there as possible. And Shirley gave us a list, and she Shirley-fied it is what I like to call it, just to make sure. So we made some changes based on what she said, and we definitely could do some things here based on what you have all said. That would have been helpful. But again, work in progress, just as sort of a stepwise approach to getting something that really reflects more of what we want it to reflect.
Well, we're indeed grateful. Thank you so much, Joy and Lynn, for presenting this afternoon. And I was thinking about this comment about what Plato had said was nurturing the herd is the essence of leadership. So I think that what we've been doing today also is nurturing one another for the expression of caring within the context of curricula as well as evaluation. So again, thank you very much for participating in our faculty learning circle. And right off the bat, I can't think of what we're having in February. I know Dr. Loxon is going to do a presentation in March, so I have to work with Shirley for next month, or not Shirley, but Terry for next month.
Dr. Loxon is taking February.
Oh, he's doing February.
Right.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that for me. So, well, thank you again for participating. It's been wonderful and always learning. It's a special opportunity for all of us. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. And really nice seeing all of you that I haven't seen for many years.
I was going to say, Lynn, my first teaching was at